Opening weekend at the box is here. We've got your preview. It's Locked on LSU. Here we go.
You are Locked on LSU, your daily podcast on the LSU Tigers. Part of the Locked on Podcast Network, your team every day.
Okay, let's get it. It is Locked on LSU, your team every day. I'm your host, Matt Moscona. Thanks so much for making it your first listen. We are free, available wherever you get great podcasts, of course, on YouTube as well. So please subscribe. As always, one of the fastest ways to help us grow is by leaving your comments below. Thank you sincerely for that. Thank you for helping make the Locked on Podcast Network the #1 sports podcast network. Thank you for tuning in every single weekday on the Gulf Coast Sports and Entertainment Network. Today's episode is brought to you by Mazda. Mazda puts the same drive into every detail. Wins define the moment, putting in the work that defines you. Stay tuned for highlights in this week's Mazda's Moving the Game Forward. There's more to a Mazda because there's more to you. Baseball at the box is back. LSU against Milwaukee, which is Algonquin for the good land. Wayne's World reference. If you're an OG, you get it. If not, look it up, kids. LSU against Milwaukee. I'm fired up for it because it's baseball at the box. The Tigers begin their national championship defense. We will get to some national championship odds, the latest odds as the 2026 season pushes off from the dock. And comparing the national championship odds and the SEC odds are going to surprise you, but we'll get to that in just a little bit. Most importantly, though, on Thursday, Jay Johnson met with reporters, announced his starting rotation, and it's exactly what we all anticipated it was going to be. It will be Casan Evans on Friday, followed by the Kansas transfer Cooper Moore on Saturday, and then William Schmidt, the phenom from Catholic High in Baton Rouge, who was outstanding as a midweek pitcher, really struggled against SEC hitters in his freshman season. Schmidt will get the ball on Sunday. Now, remember, a couple of things that we need to remind you of. This is a gigantic weekend as far as the amount of games they're going to play, okay? LSU is going to play Friday, Saturday, Sunday against Milwaukee. Monday against Kent. They're off on Tuesday. Then they have a midweek game on Wednesday. They'll travel Thursday, then play next weekend in a round-robin series down in Florida. So they're going to play 4 straight days, 5 games in 6 days, and 8 games in 10 days. So there is a plumb ton of baseball that's coming at you here over the next week and a half. And it's going to be an awesome opportunity for Jay Johnson and his staff to start to figure out this team and also to get a lot of guys innings, at-bats, opportunities in the field, all of that stuff. But maybe the best place to start is with who's going to start. It'll be Casan Evans throwing out the first pitch of the season. And remember, Evans a year ago was a freshman All-America. 5-1, a 2.05 ERA, 52 2/3 innings pitched, 71 strikeouts to just 19 walks. He was awesome. Now, Evans only had a handful of starting opportunities. He was outstanding in the series closer against Tennessee. When that day where LSU won. Remember, Jared Jones had the walk-off to win game 1. Tigers lost game 2, and then Evans came back and was dominant in game 3. But remember, then also when Zach Cowan struggled in the regional final against Little Rock. I mean, the save the season game, right? Cowan struggled. LSU was down 5-1. It was Evans came in who slammed the door. At one point, struck out 9 straight. Casan Evans has proven he has the ability to extend. Can he do it consistently? That's what Jay Johnson was asked about Evans moving to the rotation.
He's always been a starter. I brought him here with the intention of he will be a starter. I think, just call it my own, system, if you will, or process. Like, I think players crumble when you give them too much too fast. Casan, high leverage reliever, part-time starter, to weekend rotation. I think he's ready. I think he was ready last year, and obviously proved that in the postseason. 2 long outings. Pitchability is excellent. You always go back to the person of what the character is with the talent, and that usually shows up on game day. And I'm proud of him and excited for our team.
Remember, Cooper Moore is going to get the ball in game 2. Now, it is worth mentioning also that there's the threat of weather on Saturday and Sunday this weekend. Friday looks beautiful, but Saturday and Sunday there's a chance of rain. I've been told there is the possibility, so depending on when you're watching or listening to this, because of the forecast for Saturday, they could end up playing a doubleheader Friday. Again, that at this point, we're recording this on Thursday night. That's not been determined, but that is a possibility to try to get these games in if they have to do it, to manipulate it if the schedule works out that way. But Cooper Moore is going to go in game 2. Remember, Cooper Moore is the transfer from Kansas, and he was Kansas's best pitcher a year ago. He has made 44 career appearances, 14 starts. That's at over 2 seasons at Kansas. D1 Baseball ranked him the number 6 transfer pitcher in the country this year. Baseball America had him as a top 50 overall transfer, number 48 of the top 100 transfers. So this is a real key impact guy. Now, when you're going to see Cooper Moore, you're going to see a guy that's upper 80s to low 90s, 89 to 93, probably going to live in the low 90s. But the pitchability is what you're going to notice with Cooper Moore. He's not going to blow you away with velocity. He'll live down in the zone, and he's had a ton of experience with, again, those 44 outings. He was second team All Big 12 a season ago. This is the point, right? He threw 88 and 2/3 innings. 88 and 2/3 innings, 85 strikeouts to just 19 walks. That strikeout to walk ratio is outstanding per innings pitched. He's a guy that is not going to give away free passes. You're going to have to earn it against him. And that's the kind of guy that if you can wedge on a Saturday or a Sunday, generally is going to give LSU a gigantic advantage in a weekend series. Remember, you can go back and look at 2023 when Paul Skeens was awesome at the front of the rotation, was just untouchable. Ty Floyd didn't really emerge until late in the season. It was a very up and down season for Floyd. Now, he was outstanding at the end, a 19 strikeout game in the College World Series. It's sensational, but you didn't really have a 3 throughout the course of that season. Say the same thing a year ago. You had Cade Anderson, Anthony Ianson, but you really struggled to find that consistent number 3. Hence why we saw Casan Evans at one point go into the rotation. Remember, Chase Shores struggled in that role as he worked to find himself and ended up being a dominant reliever late in the season. But finding that number 3 has been tough. If you have a guy like Cooper Moore who's got more than 40 career appearances who could end up maybe being your number 3, that gives you a gigantic advantage going into any weekend. Jay Johnson, by the way, in his time at LSU, does have a loop in game 3s in the SEC. So on Sunday, or game 3s. So it could be a massive advantage for the Tigers having Cooper Moore in this rotation. And then, of course, as we mentioned, William Schmidt is going to be the game 3 starter. And this is the wild card for LSU because Schmidt is certainly the highest ceiling guy. This is a guy who passed on millions of dollars when he was coming out of Catholic High in Baton Rouge to come to LSU. As Jay Johnson says, he grew up wearing LSU pajamas like so many of us who grew up loving this program. That's William Schmidt as well. Now, Schmidt was good, really at times dominant last year when he pitched in the midweek. He was 7-0 on the season. He had a 4.73 ERA. He had 41 strikeouts in 32 1/3 innings pitched. The problem were the 22 walks. Remember, I just told you Cooper Moore walked 19 in 88 innings pitched. William Schmidt walked 22 in 32 1/3 innings pitched. That's the key. That is the key for William Schmidt. Can you throw the ball over the plate? You've got to be able to challenge hitters and not put them on base. The stuff is outstanding. And my guess is he is going to go overwhelm Milwaukee. They haven't practiced outside yet. Milwaukee is snowed over. Schmidt's going to dominate Milwaukee. I'm not really concerned about him this weekend. What I'm concerned about is just throwing strikes, getting the ball over the plate. But we'll know much more about Schmidt when you get into certainly conference play where he struggled a year ago. But then again, the same was true for Cade Anderson. Anderson was an awesome midweek guy as a freshman, could not get SEC hitters out. Fast forward 1 year of development, and he became the best pitcher in college baseball, the number 3 pick in the draft. Maybe expecting the same thing from Schmidt could be ambitious, but he's a guy that has all the talent in the world to be the best pitcher on the staff, potentially the best pitcher in the country. We'll see if it starts to materialize this weekend. So that's the rotation. What about the bullpen and what we might expect to see in the starting lineup? We'll hear from Jay Johnson when we continue next here. It's Locked on LSU, your team every day. Hiring isn't just about finding someone willing to take the job. It's about finding the right person with the right background who can actually help your business move forward. And if you want candidates who match what you're looking for, Indeed Sponsored Jobs is the move, because instead of hoping the right person stumbles across your post. Indeed helps you match with quality candidates by boosting your job listing to the people who fit your specific criteria, like skills, certification, and location. It saves time because you're spending less energy sorting through mismatches. And with sponsored jobs, your post gets seen by candidates who are actually a fit. And here's a stat that says it all. In the minute or so that we've been talking, companies like yours have made 27 hires on Indeed. That's according to Indeed data worldwide. So if you're hiring, spend less time searching and more time interviewing candidates who check all your boxes with Indeed sponsored jobs. Listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to help get your job the premium status it deserves at Indeed.com/podcast. That's Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring, do it the right way with Indeed. The Winter Games are officially here, and if you're anything like us, you're locking in for events you only get to see on the biggest stage every 4 years. And that's why following the Winter Games on FanDuel just makes sense. From medal counts to individual events to finding your angle on the sports you care about most, FanDuel gives you more ways to stay connected to the action. The drama of curling matches that start slow and somehow get super intense fast. Speed skating races decided by inches. Hockey games that feel different right from the opening faceoff. The U.S. beat Latvia 5-0 in their opening round match. The Winter Games are on, and there's no better way to follow them with FanDuel. FanDuel, play your game. So Jay Johnson not only talked about the starting rotation, he also was able to talk a good bit about his bullpen. And when we talk about it, man, there are a lot of names to know out of that bullpen.
There's a couple guys that have really improved, like Grant Fontenot. I'm really proud of him. 5 years into this thing, development happens at different times for guys. He's throwing the ball incredibly well. Maybe a guy, like I've gotten asked a lot of questions about, hey, who do we need to talk about maybe that we're not talking about? He immediately jumps to mind, Sheeran back from an injury. Really happy for Gavin to get back and compete. There's some guys on the left side too, obviously, with Garcia and Plog, Cooper Williams. So really like Rizzi, obviously. I think he's got a chance to be one of the best pitchers in the country this year. So excited about that part of the team.
I want to start where Jay started. And Grant Fontenot is going to be a guy, Jay said it there, if you're not talking about him yet, you need to be. Because Fontenot is a guy that's taking a strange path here, having started at LSU and then going to the University of Texas and then being out of baseball and really being from Lafayette was only going to get back in if he had the opportunity to pitch again at LSU. And he'll tell this story eventually, but kind of had to beg his way back onto the team. And right now, you heard Jay say it, development comes at different stages for guys. For Fontenot, he's pushing upper 90s right now. And the second guy Jay mentioned there was Devin Sheeran. Fontenot and Sheeran are very likely going to be your setup closer in whatever order. Remember, Sheeran came over from Mount St. Mary's. He's another 6'5", strong-arm righty. And he was going to factor into the back of the bullpen a year ago, tore his ACL, missed the season. Well, Sheeran's back, and Sheeran Fontenot could be a dominant setup closer at the back of the bullpen. Maverick Rizzi will have a huge role on this team. Gavin Guidry, I wouldn't be surprised, depending on how you heard Jay mention Cooper Williams there as well. I wouldn't be surprised if Gavin Guidry ends up starting that game on Monday, the fourth game. It's going to depend on how the weekend plays out. I mean, Jay always plays it like he's going out to win the game, and we'll see, who they need to pitch in the earlier game. Gavin Guidry is going to be in that mix as well. So if you use Cowan and Williams during the weekend, Guidry could be in line to get that start on Monday. So something worth keeping an eye on there as well. Plug is a guy from the lefty who's going to be a situational lefty we haven't talked a lot about. You're going to notice him because it's a really quirky delivery. Garcia's the transfer coming in from Oregon, was a high school teammate of Stephen Milam, who's a guy that's going to factor in from the left side. They just have an endless number of arms and options, which is why this is going to be so fun to watch the evolution here, to see who ends up developing into what roles, and it all starts this weekend. Jay Johnson did add a little bit more about the back of the bullpen.
I think we have multiple guys that can finish games like we did last year, and we'll win the one in front of us. I like to operate under the theory that the world's going to blow up tomorrow, so we might as well win today. And but I do feel like whether that's matchup, whether that's guys throwing the ball well and you leave him in the game, whether that's a guy evolves as a closer, I think all those are really, really possible.
Now, the other thing that is worth keeping an eye on here, worth talking about a smidge, is Milwaukee. And I'll talk about LSU in the field in a second here, but Milwaukee, their mascot's the Panthers. A year ago, they were sub 500. They were 24-35. But they were 16-13 in the Horizon League and finished third. That happens often with these lower level teams, especially ones from the North and the Midwest that have to travel. And they just end up playing the whole start of the season effectively on the road. And so you're going to see the non-conference record not look great. So the overall record may not look great. A team like Milwaukee, their way to regional play, of course, is by winning their conference and getting an auto bid. They are, keep an eye on Charlie Marion. He's a senior outfielder. He's their top returning hitter who hit 279 a year ago. You heard me right. Not a big power team. As a team, they hit 264 last season. So just 56 homers. They do run a good bit. They stole 75 bases in 90 attempts. And the staff ERA was 7.40. So they were not great, but they do return a bunch from a season ago. Their third place finish in the Horizon League. Now, as for LSU on the infield, here's what Jay Johnson had to say going into opening day.
We have the best shortstop in college baseball, in my opinion, no question about it, especially from a defensive standpoint. I think his leadership skills have really elevated the way the rest of the guys are capable of playing out there. I think, when you look at Zach, really good first baseman defensively. And then there's going to be some mixing and matching at third base and second base within games. And as we go, I like the guys that are going to be a part of that.
Mixing and matching at third and second within the game. Okay. Something that we've seen here as LSU is scrimmaged is we've all made the assumption that Trent Caraway is going to be the third baseman, the transfer from Oregon State. And we've seen a platoon at second base, right? With Seth Dardar, with Tanner Reeves, with Braden Simpson. Tanner Reeves has been knocking the cover off the ball. He's at over 400 since the fall. So that's a guy that's going to find his way in the lineup. Don't be surprised if we see Trent Caraway play some second base and Reeves go to third. Now, Reeves played some third last year and it wasn't great. And that's ultimately why Michael Braswell, despite the fact that he hit sub 200, ended up playing third base, was because Reeves the glove didn't work at third. But they've also struggled here in the preseason a bit defensively at second. And so if Caraway plays second, obviously more ground ball, double play opportunities there at the middle infield. If you put a premium there, even though second is not a premium defensive position, it is where you go to turn double plays in the middle infield. You could see potentially Caraway play some second and Reeves go to third. Keep an eye on that. Also, don't be surprised if you see Jack Ruckert, the freshman out of Catholic High in Baton Rouge, play some second base as a defensive replacement. Ryan Terrio, former LSU grade who comes on my radio show every Friday, has for more than a decade, knows all these guys well as Coach Jack since he was a kid. Mentioned a month ago about Jack Ruckert sort of making a push there at second. I don't know that Ruckert's going to be a guy that is fighting to be an everyday player, at least not early in the season, but getting his feet wet and a guy that certainly has a big bat, did in high school, but is maybe a better defensive option, a more solid defensive option could be there. If you see guys hitting up and down the lineup and you need a defensive option on the middle infield, Ruckert could be one of those guys as well. So just one worth filing away there. And one more, Jay talked about playing so many guys early in the season, which is really what these games are for.
I think it's good for the team when you can get more guys involved in winning. I think it helps team chemistry. In our case, you could only put 9 guys in the lineup on a day, but this is another team. You might see like 14 position players play in a relatively close game, or the old 7-pitcher wins. We didn't quite have as many of those last year, but 2022, we sure had a lot of them. And then, it also helps you see how guys respond and what their strengths truly are versus what you anticipate or think that they are.
Jay said, act as if the world's going to end tomorrow, play to win the game today. And there's some truth to that, but it's not exactly true. You're not going to compromise your opportunity to win long-term, to win a game in February. So He's going to run a lot of guys out there to find out as much as he can about this roster when you're playing for real against someone wearing a different jersey. And that all starts on Friday. By the way, there are updated odds for both the SEC Championship and the College World Series that I can't wait to share with you. We'll do that as we wrap up next right here. It is Locked on LSU, your team every day. This is Mazda's moving the game forward. For those who show there's more to the score than what's on the screen. How about Jay Johnson? Should we go anywhere else? Jay Johnson, LSU's head coach, 2 national titles in the last 3 years. He enters his 5th season in Baton Rouge, already with 2 more additions onto the Intimidator. There's just no coach in college baseball that works as tirelessly, that recruits as fiercely as Jay Johnson with greater attention to detail. It's why LSU has regained its status atop college baseball and could very well be vying for back-to-back national championships this season. This reminds us of what it takes to raise the bar. The extra work off the field, the dime in the court. When you dial in every detail, you give it the extra fire, that grit, the never quit. Mazda puts the same passion into every model. Highlights make the reel. What it took to get there makes it count. There's more to a Mazda because there's more to you. As the Tigers get ready to start the 2026 campaign, one thing that's pretty fascinating is the betting odds for the SEC and for the national championship. And this kind of came across my desk earlier today. It was kind of stunning to see this. But you would assume LSU, which was the overwhelming favorite by the coaches in the league to win the SEC championship, that LSU would be favored by the odds makers to win the SEC championship. But not the case. As a matter of fact, Arkansas at 3-1 is favored to win the SEC. Now, the Hogs were outstanding last year. They were a super talented team that ultimately were ousted in Omaha by LSU. It was that crazy comeback for the Tigers with the line drive shot in left field that allowed LSU to walk it off, which was amazing to watch that drama unfold the way that it did. But Arkansas actually favored to win the SEC at 3-1, followed by LSU at 4-1. Tennessee, Texas, Georgia, Mississippi State follow. Remember, Tennessee at 6-1 to win the SEC. Now without Tony Vitello, who's the new manager of the San Francisco Giants. They also lost their pitching coach who went with Vitello to the Giants. It's a big loss for Tennessee. We'll see how much Vitello's energy meant to that program. Mississippi State's also interesting there at 10-1. Remember, Brian O'Connor, who spent 22 seasons at the University of Virginia, won a national championship there. He's a former pulmonary assistant at Notre Dame. O'Connor now heads to Starkville, and Mississippi State has a super talented but young team. If you're looking to bet maybe some value, there's great value there potentially with Mississippi State. They may be a year away from truly competing at the highest level, but that's a talented team with a good coach with great history. It's won a national championship that could find its way into the mix. I mentioned LSU was second in the SEC odds. Well, while LSU was second in the SEC odds, they're actually favored to win the national championship at 7-1. UCLA at 10-1, then Arkansas at 11-1, Texas, Mississippi State, Georgia, Tennessee all follow, North Carolina at 20-1. So it's interesting to think that it's more difficult, according to that, the odds for LSU to win the SEC championship than it is for LSU to win the national championship. But obviously, it is just a massively difficult Southeastern Conference. And if you've proven your ability to get into and through the postseason, you can win a national championship, as LSU's done now 2 times in 3 years. And if they're going to do it, it's going to be on the backs of really key guys. Derek Curiel had a chance to speak to Kendall Rogers from D1 Baseball, who has Derek Curiel as his National Player of the Year this season. Here was Jay Johnson on Curiel on the eve of opening day.
His superpower is what I would call it, is the ability to focus in the box, compete in the box, and take responsibility for his play. You know, he's not one to blame or, any of that stuff. He wants to be the best player in the field every time he takes the field, and a lot of times he is. And there's guys that maybe have more talent, although he's incredibly talented. But I think what you saw last year was talent with an elite mindset. You know, as long as he chooses to bring that to the field, he'll continue to be successful.
Derek Curiel has added nearly 20 pounds between his freshman and sophomore years. He's listed at 192. So you're talking about a guy north of 6 feet tall. So 6'2", now 192. And they always say the last thing to come is the power tool, right? And for Derek Curiel, he had an incredible freshman All-American campaign a season ago for LSU where, he hit 345 and had 7 homers and showed at times even opposite field power. But Curiel this year, you're going to see him become a double-digit homer guy. You're going to see him shift to center field, and a guy that very likely is going to be a top half of round 1 guy as a draft-eligible sophomore. And the other guy, I got to mention, is Jake Brown, who is finally going to get a chance to be an everyday player, the most talented player on LSU's roster, a 5-tool guy, will get 250 at-bats this year, and that's going to be fun to see.
I think he's improved a lot. I think he has so much physical talent. He's one of those guys who were able to get in there as a freshman and made some positive contributions to that. And at that time, I was like, hey, this guy's probably going to turn into a staple player, and he did. I love the competitor. I love how important playing good here is to him. I think he's smart. He's taken the best parts of some guys that he's played with and implemented those into his baseball game and into his leadership skills. He's doing such a good job on the leadership part of it. I almost have to remind him, like, hey, make sure you're taking care of what you need to be the best player you can be as well. And I mean that as a compliment.
Jake Brown hit 320 a season ago with 8 homers. Another guy with 250 at-bats who should be staring down between 10 and 15 homers. It all gets started Friday at Alec Box Stadium. I can't wait. We'll be here every step of the way, all the way to and through Omaha, where hopefully the Tigers are hoisting championship trophy number 9. Until then, it's Locked on LSU. Please subscribe on podcast and YouTube. Your team every day.